I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly. We're back with another video, and if you're new to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys. If you're into things like true crime stories, news, and political commentary, then I think you will definitely enjoy the channel. And if you are a returning listener or subscriber, thank you so much for being a friend. As always, guys, I greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoy the video, please give us a like, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel as always if you're not already doing that. And it really does help me out, guys, and I would very much appreciate each and every one of you. So, I want to get into this today, guys. I wanted to come on here and do a brief history of the Espionage Act, okay? Because if you don't know by now, well, we're fucked, basically. To put, long story short, our government is screwing every single last one of us, as they have been doing for decades now, and we're finally reaching the point of climax, if you will. So they're really drilling the screws in as hard as they can at this point. And now our federal government has gone after President Trump in an attempt to rig the election, in an attempt to basically put the favor back as much as they can on Joe Biden and in his court, as if that would ever work. I mean, people can see how half dead and retarded he is, but nevertheless, they definitely don't want Donald Trump. That is for sure. If one thing can be actually determined and known for a fact, it's that, the elites, the bureaucracy, the oligarchy do not want Donald Trump back in the Oval Office. They do not want to give him the chance to be elected president. And so they're pulling all the punches. And so I wanted to just kind of go over what it is Espionage Act is for, how it's been used in the past, and surprisingly, just things that I didn't know when I started to kind of look into this. And maybe you guys haven't had the time to look into it. So I've kind of compiled it here, and we're going to get into it right now. So I wanted to start off with a little video for us here. And then we will discuss, and we'll go over some of the history. And then I want to get into this really awesome thread with you guys that I found on Twitter that actually kind of explains and breaks down the charges really well. And I want to see what you guys think at the end. So let's get into it.
Former President Trump is facing charges which include violations of the Espionage Act. But what is that, and how did it start? Let me explain. The Espionage Act dates back to World War I. It was passed in 1917 and was originally used as a way to suppress disapproval of the war and crack down on spying. The act makes it illegal to remove, copy, or share national defense information that could harm the U.S. It also makes it a crime to hold on to that information. You may have heard of the Espionage Act in connection to Edward Snowden, the whistleblower who leaked highly classified information about government surveillance to journalists in 2013. At the time, he worked as a contractor for the National Security Agency. If convicted, what could this mean for the former president? Violations of the section of the Espionage Act being used to charge Mr. Trump could result in a fine, but could also carry a prison sentence of up to 10 years. And here's something that may come as a surprise. Information does not have to be labeled as classified in order for a person to violate the Espionage Act. This means that Mr. Trump can still be found guilty, even though he says he declassified the documents he had.
First of all, it's President Trump, you little bitch. You better put some respect on his name. Just kidding. So that was just kind of a brief little summary, and I want to get into actually some of the more nitty-gritty details of this, because that was just a kind of a brief overview, and it actually did not start there. So this all happened under President John Adams. So this is one of his quote-unquote worst things that he actually brought into his administration, or that kind of was birthed out of his administration. And a lot of the issues with this act are that, first of all, if you want to, like, I don't know, I feel like this kind of goes a step too far, or this is just one of those unnecessary laws that we don't actually need. You know, we have treason laws already, which is like the highest crime you can commit against the country, which there are people who have been found guilty of that, and we'll touch on that lightly. But I'm just saying, if you're convicted of a crime, why call it espionage, or why use this umbrella term and then sprinkle in all of these vague statutes underneath this one umbrella? You're crossing into like very muddy waters there. So, and then the main issue with it is that it kind of impedes in a lot of ways, or it's used to impede on journalists' First Amendment rights. And this is the main issue with it. And people have been trying to abolish this for years now, but there's always been some pushback, funny enough. So it started here in 1798. It was passed in preparation for an anticipated war with France. It was called the Alien and Sedition Act. So this is before it became known as the Espionage Act of 1917. And then we had later a Sedition Act of 1918. So the backlash to the Sedition Act swept Federalists from powers. So the prosecutions and subsequent convictions under the Sedition Act galvanized opposition to the Federalist administration. The prosecuted Republican printers and editors became folk heroes. That sounds familiar. In the election of 1800, the Federalists were swept from power, never to return, and Jefferson subsequently pardoned those who had been convicted under the law. Almost 170 years later, the Supreme Court wrote in the celebrated libel case, New York Times Co. versus Sullivan, in 1964, although the Sedition Act was never tested in this court, the attack upon its validity has carried the day in the court of history. Today, the Sedition Act of 1798 is generally remembered as a violation of fundamental First Amendment principles. Holy shit, that's a mouthful. So, critics viewed the act as a thinly disguised partisan effort to control political debate until the next presidential election. So, which is kind of how they're using it for now. I mean, funny enough, history does often repeat itself, guys. So, let's get into this now. We have moved about a decade into the future. The Espionage Act is an old piece of anti-spy legislation piquing interest again after former President Donald Trump was indicted by a federal grand jury. Among the charges is a violation of the Espionage Act, which deals with documents related to national defense and the unlawful retention of documents. The indictment comes as a special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Trump's handling of classified materials nears an end. After news of the indictment broke, Trump took to social media to defend himself, sharing on his platform Truth Social, "I'm an innocent man. I'm the most innocent man that you've ever seen. I'm innocent. You know it. He knows it. Everybody knows it." That was his full statement. So, okay, so after Trump left the White House in January 2021, the National Archives began a year of correspondence with the former president's team in search of missing classified materials. Federal agents eventually searched Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence and found over 300 classified documents. Some were allegedly kept in violation of the Espionage Act. Ooh, sounds scary, guys. Y'all have all seen the boxes, right? We've all seen the scary boxes and like the pictures of the documents that were strewn all across the floor with like big scary manila yellow envelopes. Oh my god, I just got scared just thinking about it. Yeah, so they want you to believe that Donald Trump was scheming on the United States. They use the term espionage to make you think about him being a spy, him giving things to maybe our foreign enemies and things of that nature. But the fact of the matter is, none of that ever happened. It is a common practice for presidents to bring along with them documents, notes, old, it could be like old classified memos or whatever the case may be. They can bring records, all kinds of different records. And if they're no longer valid, if they're no longer something that is still in use, because obviously the administrations are going to switch when you stop being president, those are all things that the president takes with him. And this has been a tradition and something that has happened for years, because the president is expected to start a presidential library in which he gathers all of these things from his time as president and puts them together so where people can one day go and look at these items, okay? Totally normal, but they want to make you think that he did something god awful, he did something so wrong, and he might have been like slow walking the documents that they wanted, or he might have been slow walking the investigation. But I honestly feel like that's his right to do, because he was working with his attorney. You know, he's a busy man. He's been campaigning ever since he got out of office. So it's not like he's just sitting around not doing anything like some of these other presidents do. Okay? So, and not only that, but the fact that he has been prosecuted and persecuted by the deep state for the past 7, 8, whatever, however many years, going on 9 years now. Like, he has been, they have been trying to get him for almost a decade now. And now they finally feel like with a loophole, they have him. Same thing with the New York case. They're just stitching shit together, throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what's going to stick. And that's why people are so outraged. And like it said with the Sedition Act of 1798, you know, people, it galvanized back then the opposition, the people who were being persecuted. In that case, it was also the Republican Party then too. It galvanized them and people who were sympathetic to them against the deep state or the oligarchy or whatever you want to call it. So it ended up backfiring, which I have a sinking suspicion that it just might do the same thing here. But the only difference now is the media. And the media has been a hell of a tool to use against President Trump, to say the least. It's a blessing and a curse in some ways, but I feel like it's brainwashing. And I was watching something earlier. It was crazy. They were like saying how in the debate of 1960 between Nixon and JFK, like people that were sitting at home actually, and who were only hearing the debate and not seeing it, thought that Nixon had won that debate based on what he was saying, his words, the policy that was being expressed. And then all the people that watched it on TV thought that JFK did better because he looked better, he was more well presented. You know, Nixon kind of came across as like shifty and a little bit like, you know, nervous and sweaty, but he knew what he was talking about. And JFK sounded a little bit more, you know, like a novice. He sounded a little bit more amateur, but it didn't matter because people that saw him thought that he won the debate. So I find that to be fascinating in a lot of ways, because it just goes to show you that the television is actually a very strong form of brainwashing, and it's so true. It's programming and it's brainwashing to like the umpteenth degree, and people don't realize it or they don't think about it. And that's the reason why like screens are so powerful. It's really the reasons why we're seeing a lot of all of the change in society that we've seen over the past 100 years is because of all these screens everywhere. I mean, they have been programming people for decades now, and it's worked. I mean, just look around you. So, okay, so an Espionage Act of 1917, enacted just after the beginning of World War I, makes it illegal to obtain information, capture photographs, or copy descriptions of any information relating to national defense with the intent for that information to be used against the United States or for the gain of any foreign nation, which is ridiculous. Of course he wasn't doing that. Just think about that for a second. Think about that sentence for just a second, honestly. Information relating to national defense with the intent for that information to be used against the United States or for the gain of any foreign nation. Why would he be doing that if he was wanting to become president in the next 2 years? I mean, it's just, not only that, but President Trump is like one of the most patriotic people ever. Like, he honestly truly loves this country. I do believe that. So, like, it's ridiculous. It's such a witch hunt, and it's so ridiculous at this point that it's almost like, I don't even care what was in those boxes. I never really did care. And I mean, y'all let me know, please, in the comments, like, y'all let me know, like, is that something that you see as a problem, or you honestly, like, wonder, or like, you find yourself feeling icky about the fact that Donald Trump had boxes full of, like, God knows what, when we all know that Obama took 1 million documents home, and then Bill Clinton had this whole, like, sock drawer incident where he was hiding confidential documents in his sock drawer. Joe Biden had documents that he wasn't even supposed to have from his time in the Senate next to his Corvette. Hillary Clinton smashed her phones and had a whole illegal server where she was storing classified information, an email server. So it's like, no, I don't really care what's in the boxes. Like, y'all, do y'all care? Do y'all think that's a problem? Because at this point, unless it was something honestly egregious, like plans to like blow up the country or something like that, then no, I don't care. I don't. Or unless he was actually trading secrets or actually committing treason, then yeah, I would have a problem with it. But what he was doing was not that, not even close. So it's very just alarming, the lengths that they will go to at this point. We can truly see it. And they're trying this whole like shock and awe phase of this like persecution right now, just to kind of, I think, make people feel defeated or make people feel like they want to give up. It's too much trouble. But I don't think they realize that they're really radicalizing more and more people every day. And it's kind of strengthening a lot of people's resolve in regards to what's going on with Donald Trump. So the purpose was to bolster the war effort again. So they wanted to control people's speech. They wanted to make sure that people weren't talking about the war badly. So, enforced by Woodrow Wilson's Attorney General, the law made it illegal to share any information that could interfere with the war or stand to benefit foreign adversaries. Yeah. Okay, great. One famous example of espionage is Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, the couple convicted in a conspiracy to share atomic intelligence secrets with the Soviet Union. They were executed at New York's Sing Sing Correctional Facility in June 1953. And they're particularly famous for being the first citizens convicted and executed for espionage during peacetime. So again, why do we have a crime called treason? Because I'm pretty sure that's what they were actually supposed to have been convicted of, especially if they're being put to death. And this is something serious. Obviously, sharing atomic intelligence secrets, yeah, that's serious. That's a crime. You're basically plotting with the enemy to blow Americans up. Even if, there's presidents that have like sold guns to cartels. Look at Obama's Fast and Furious scheme. Like, come on now. Like, it's so, people just don't know these things. And it's because most people don't care or don't have the time to look them up. They don't, are interested in it. But, this is something, these are like rabbit holes that I've just continuously fallen down, and I have the time, I guess, to look into these things and just really like try to understand and digest what's happening. And so that's why I kind of get into it. But it's sick. It really is. They rely on people's, just need for complacency or their need for safety and like feel good and like just kind of live their own lives. They rely on that in order to kind of pull the wool over everyone's eyes. So, okay guys, so let's get into this. These were statements made by President Trump after his indictment happened, and he epically actually went to a Cuban restaurant. I don't know, I think the Cuban restaurant came before this, but these are just a portion of his statements that he made in Georgia. He was campaigning like right after he got indicted, like a Chad, like an utter champion that he is. So,
President, all of my documents fell under what is known as the Presidential Records Act, which is not at all a criminal act. Everything. It's all judged by the Presidential Records Act. In this whole fake indictment, they don't even once mention the Presidential Records Act, which is really the ruling act, which this case falls under 100% because they want to use something called the Espionage Act. Doesn't that sound terrible? Oh, espionage. We got a box. I got a box. The Espionage. The Espionage Act of 1917, I think it was put in there about World War I. Boxes. And by the way, Biden's got 1,850 boxes. He's got boxes in Chinatown, D.C. He's got boxes all over the place. He doesn't know what the hell to do with them. And he's fighting them on the boxes. He doesn't want to give the boxes. And then they say, Trump is obstructioning. He's obstructing. No, it's a sad day for the country. I said, last night I said that our country has tears.
Aww.
President, all of my...
That's horrible! Our country has tears? I just dropped one right now. Oh my god. He's so right, though. Like, he is so right. I mean, this is a disgrace. I'm actually going to let Mark Levin get into these people's asses because he was going the fuck off earlier. So let me just let him tear into everyone because, I mean, nobody can do it. He's fired up enough for everyone.
For what? For what? And they indict him today? They indict him today in Miami? All of a sudden it's in Miami? All of a sudden we have a Florida grand jury because the moron in Washington figured out that there are venue issues that could lose him his case. This guy, this prosecutor, he lost 8-0 in the U.S. Supreme Court when they overturned the conviction of the former governor of Virginia because this jerk took a statute and expanded it. A jury in North Carolina wouldn't convict John Edwards because this jerk took a campaign statute and expanded it. And he's taken this case and he's undermining the country and he's interfering with the presidential election. And let me be clear, as Jarrett said, the Attorney General of the United States made this final decision. This is not the independent counsel statute. This is a special counsel appointed by the Attorney General under a department.
Merrick Garland is such a short little elven fuck. He is so bitter. Oh my god, he probably cries himself to sleep at night, honestly, because he wasn't able to become a Supreme Court justice, and he still, to this day, blames Donald Trump for that. He has Trump derangement syndrome. He's got one of the worst cases in the country. But, you know, Merrick Garland is a special kind of fucktard, you know, truly. And he's going after so many people in his little administration. His department has been so weaponized, and he tries to lie in everyone's face and just say how fair he is and how he's not being political, he's not partisan, and he's everything. He's every bit of that and more. I mean, he's honestly the worst.
Of Justice regulation. This Attorney General who pretends he's Helen Keller, he made the decision to indict the former president, and they made the decision to interfere in this election.
Oh my God.
You want to talk about an insurrection? This is an insurrection. And that's exactly what's going on here.
Oh my God.
Let me go on.
Go
Joe
on.
Biden is the crookedest crook that's ever been in the Oval Office.
Ooh.
Everywhere we look, there's a predicate for a special counsel.
Oh my God.
They won't appoint a special counsel, even though it's compelled under the law in which they appointed this special counsel. And you're not supposed to appoint a special counsel against your political opponent. You're supposed to appoint one in the case of Biden. 20 shell corporations. $10 million coming from the communist Chinese military.
Hello?
Spread out among the family. No businesses to support this. Endless meetings with Biden's with Hunter Biden's business partners. Bob Alinsky, who ties Joe Biden to the crimes. Mr. Big, Mr. 10%. And what does Biden say? Well, then where's the money? He's asking us, come and catch me if you can. The idea that this man isn't under a criminal investigation and that they criminalized a damn document case to go after Donald Trump is sickening. And I would say this to our fellow Americans. Don't be bamboozled by these cable channels and these fools who come on and tell you, well, he's not above the law. Are you kidding me? Democrat Attorney General in New York, Democrat prosecutor in Manhattan, Democrat prosecutor in Atlanta, Democrat Attorney General in Washington, D.C. What do you mean he's not above the law? There is no law. What's going on here is a disgusting disgrace. It is war on Trump. It is war on the Republican Party, and it is a war on the Republic. The radical left is doing what the radical left does while they cover up for Biden the way they covered up for Hillary. If Donald Trump is to be charged like this, Hillary Clinton should have been charged with 10,000 counts of obstruction because that's how many emails she destroyed. And 5 counts of destroying cell phones, because that's how many cell phones they destroyed.
Oh my God.
I'm done, and I'm sick of it.
Oh my God, he just snapped. He just, Mark Levin just spit bars, dude. Oh my God. Do you ever, like, do y'all feel like, I don't know, you remember, like, your dad used to yell at you as a kid? Like, that's honestly what I just felt like. I was prepared to go to my room after this, but thank God, you know, he let me make it, because, woo, he was spitting bars. Okay, so he said a lot there, and everything he said was totally true. Like, that's why I didn't even really have to pause it, you know, at all, because he was just, like I said, he said everything that needed to be said, but it's just, like... when you really break it down like that, and I hate, like, all the people on Twitter who just want to, like, turn their noses up and gloat like that and say, yeah, well, no one's above the law. Yeah, actually, people are above the law, and people have been above the law for a long time, and it's called a standard. You can like it or not like it, and I don't necessarily love it, but I do feel like it is important if we're going to hold ourselves to a higher standard in this country, that it's not good to have this tit for tat with our politicians, constantly seeking to go after one another, especially the amount of laws that we have on the books. Unless the government is prepared to totally strip itself down to the bare bones, and then, like, start from scratch, basically, where we have only the simplest laws. Well, not simple, but we have only very few laws that very specifically outline what is illegal and what is not illegal, with no gray area, or as little gray area as possible, and get rid of all of these, like, hundreds, thousands of laws that we have on the books that allow you to basically be guilty of a crime every day of the week, not even knowing it, because otherwise we're going to end up in an endless cycle of everybody prosecuting everybody. Democrats going after Republicans, and it's just going to cause for chaos and utter destruction of the entire country. So unless the government's prepared to do that, then yes, we need to uphold the standard of not going after political enemies. So I'm sorry, in that case, then yeah, the highest politicians are above the law, except in cases of extreme, illegal activities, where you're basically caught red-handed. But presidents, leaders of state are going to have to be, in some form or another, a criminal, because they have a very big and important job to do of running a country and dealing with people that are corrupt and people that are from all different parts of the world, have all different types of backgrounds. So it's a very specific and niche job that they do. So I think that, yeah, it's an important standard. And no, I don't think that, now, obviously, yeah, we know who's above the law and who's not above the law. So your moral high ground argument, all you people on Twitter that are trying to, like, have this, like, argument with yourself or with whoever it is you think that you're playing that shit to, no. It's not that, Trump broke a law. Y'all are probably breaking laws every day, the ones that are saying that. It's the fact of law is not being applied evenly. It is not being applied fairly, and that is wrong. Especially when it is one specific party, put that in big quotes because we have obviously a uniparty, but it's Democrats going after specifically Republicans, as Mark Levin just outlined, then we have a massive fucking problem, okay? So now I want to get into this thread, guys. I might not read the whole thing because it's a bit long and I don't want to, like, bore you guys, but I will post the whole thing in the description. You guys have to go read this thread. It is so smart. It is so brilliant the way that he lays this thing out, like, piece by piece. And he is a former assistant U.S. attorney. He worked on 2 Supreme Court confirmations and clerked for 2 federal appellate judges. Okay, Will Scharf, who is running for, he's candidate for Missouri Attorney General. So if you live in Missouri, their election's coming up, you need to vote for this guy, because he seems like he's right on point and he knows what the F he's talking about. So let's get into the detail. Here are 6 key points on the case. So point number 1. Okay, interplay between the Espionage Act and the Presidential Records Act. A lot of my friends have spoken insightfully about the scope of the Presidential Records Act. I direct you to this commentary and this piece by Judicial Watch about the Clinton sock drawer case. Basically, their argument distills down to the idea that the president's authority to retain personal records, as well as his rights to access his presidential records, make it impossible to prosecute him under the Espionage Act. Section at issue here is 793E, because the government cannot prove unauthorized possession as required under the statute. So it requires the government to prove that the defendant knew he had national defense information in his possession, and also that the defendant knew that there was a government official entitled to receive the information, and also that the defendant then willfully failed to deliver it to that official. This is a very high set of mens rea bars to jump in any circumstance. Proving a defendant's intent and knowledge can often be tough, but it's even tougher here. The Presidential Records Act sets up a system where the president designates all records that he creates either as presidential or personal records. A former president is supposed to turn over his presidential records to NARA, and he has the right to keep his personal records. Based on the documents I've read and his actions that I've read about, I believe that Trump viewed his boxes as his personal records under the Presidential Records Act. These are statements he made, quoted in the indictment, that support that view. If Trump considered the contents of these boxes to be of purely personal interest, hence his designation of them as personal records, did he knowingly retain national defense information? Did he really think these documents, like years-old briefing notes and random maps jumbled together with his letters, news clippings, scribbled notes, and random miscellaneous items, could be used to the injury of the United States? Or did he just think of them as mementos of his time in office? His personal records of the 4 years akin to a journal or diary. If he thought these boxes were his personal records, he may have believed that NARA simply had no right to receive them at all, meaning that he did not willfully withhold anything from an official. He knew he had the right to receive them, meaning that he did not willfully withhold anything from an official he knew had the right to receive them, because he didn't believe that anyone had the right to receive them, because they were personal. By breathlessly bandying around classification levels and markings, the special counsel is trying to make this case seem much, much simpler than it is. Classification levels do not automatically make something national defense information, and having classified documents in your possession is not enough to convict here. This is not a matter of classified documents plus Mar-a-Lago bathroom equals conviction. That's what they want you to think, and that's the media's inch-deep view, typically, but it's dead wrong. More than anything, this case hinges on the ability of the special counsel to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, aspects of Trump's state of mind that will be extremely difficult to prove in this case because of his obligations and rights under the Presidential Records Act, in addition to all of the usual issues. Okay, so that's point 1. Okay, like I said, it's kind of long. We might get through just a couple of these. Let's see. Point 2. Harm to America or benefit to foreign countries is the standard. Anyone who has worked around the government knows that overclassification is a huge problem. A ton of documents end up being classified because of arcane technical rules that may not reflect the real world. If the president were to ask the Navy what's for lunch for the next week at Coronado, for example, I bet you the answer comes back with a classification mark on it. That's ridiculous. Walt Nauta and DOJ misconduct. Far and away, the most troubling side story to emerge from this saga so far are the allegations made by Trump aide and co-defendant Walt Nauta's lawyer last week. You may have missed it if you blinked. Not surprisingly, the mainstream media has mostly buried this one. Nauta's lawyer, Stanley Woodward, alleged in a court filing that during a meeting with prosecutors about his client's case, the head of counterintelligence section of DOJ's National Security Division, Jay Bratt, suggested Woodward's judicial application for a D.C. Superior Court judgeship might be considered more favorably if he and his clients cooperated against Trump. Oh my god! Oh my god, is that pay for play? Is that a little, what? What is that? What is that about, Jay Bratt? Yeah. Not surprised, though. I mean, we're talking about Merrick Garland and Joe Biden's DOJ being corrupt. What? You would have never thought, right? If true, and I find it hard to believe that Woodward just made the whole thing up, this is wild misconduct. Truly wild. It could undermine the entire case against both Trump and Nauta. It could end careers at DOJ if fairly investigated. And it should be fair. Oh my god, I'm going to call my representatives tomorrow because they need to know this. Okay, anyways, y'all, if y'all care, bring this up to your representatives about this pay to play, what would appear to be a scheme in regards to this prosecution. This is very wild. And a word on Stanley Woodward. I don't know him, but I know of him. He is a highly accomplished lawyer. Spent a decade at Akin Gump, a top law firm, clerked on the D.C. Circuit, and has very substantial experience in government investigations. This is not some fly-by-night TV lawyer. He is a real deal legal heavyweight, and he's leveling an extremely serious allegation of misconduct against a senior official at DOJ. Oh my god, are you kidding? Wow, and here's an article backing that up from The Guardian. That's crazy. I had not heard about this at all. That's insane. So I will link this as well, guys. I'm not going to read on this, but wow. I'm blown away. This is my first time, truly digesting this. I kind of just, skimmed through it. Wow. Okay, this will be the last one. Okay. Attorney-client privilege. This is another important point to this. So, the indictment relies on a significant amount of information received in one form or another from one of Trump's lawyers, Evan Corcoran, who was compelled to testify in front of the grand jury, which is so egregious. It destroys relationship between attorney and client because there's supposed to be absolute confidentiality between those two parties in order to keep and maintain a fair justice system. So the fact that they want to blow that up, and the fact that the attorney actually did it, like, yes, the judge can tell you, you must testify. Send me to jail then, because at the end of the day, that lawyer would have won had he taken the case all the way up to the Supreme Court and really pushed the issue. But as per usual, people don't have balls, a backbone, or any sort of will to do the right thing in this country. He just rolled over and did what they told him to do. So the attorney-client privilege protects from disclosure to the government confidential communications made between clients and their attorneys. It has been around for centuries and is considered a core protection in our system of justice. The crime-fraud exception, though, allows the attorney-client privilege to be broken in rare circumstances when two requirements are met. First, there needs to be a prima facie, showing that the client was engaged in criminal conduct, and second, the client has to have obtained or sought the attorney's assistance in furthering that crime. I haven't seen DOJ's filings on Corcoran, but I'd be interested to know how they argued this. First of all, what was the crime they used as a predicate? Was it unlawful retention of these documents? If so, there's nothing in the indictment that I can see indicating that Corcoran's communications with Trump would have furthered that in any way that would justify breaching privilege. Was it obstruction? I think this is the most likely option. They pierced attorney-client privilege using obstruction as the predicate crime for the crime-fraud exception, saying that Trump's conversations with Corcoran amounted to him attempting to enlist Corcoran in a criminal obstruction scheme. Now, we'll see how that goes for the government. I have my doubts. But if that's the case, just reading this indictment, it feels like the obstruction charges may have been structured specifically in part just to get Corcoran's testimony in to help buttress what would have otherwise been a much weaker case against Trump on the substantive issues. On substantive charges. In any case, special counsel is going to have to show why the communications in question were a solicitation by Trump to Corcoran to join him in criminal acts, as opposed to Trump asking a lawyer he hired to advise him on his legal defense, to tell him what his options were, and to outline what defensive steps might be possible and what was done by others in previous cases like Hillary's emails. Reading the conversations in the indictment, they sound a lot more like honest attorney-client communications than they do crime-fraud to me, even with all the ellipses and modifications. I expect a motion by Trump's legal team on this issue, and if they win that, will cut the guts out of much of this case. Very tough to prove up intent and willfulness the way the government needs to without Corcoran, at least based on what we see in the indictment. So I will post the rest of this, guys. There's 2 more points. He talks about timing and why Jack Smith. So I would definitely suggest you guys go on and read it. I will be reading the rest of it as well. It's worth it. Repost it if you have Twitter. Repost it to whatever social media you do have, because it's an excellent thread and it goes into such great detail that explains a lot. So at the end of the day, I think Trump was honestly trying to... he was really trying to have some form of peace, and he was really trying to make compromises and really work with everyone as much as he could while he was in office, even though he was very hard-talking and very much like gung-ho during his campaign. You know, he realized the importance of coming together and trying to like bring down the temperature. But now we're boiling hot, baby. They have turned it all the way up, and it's on go at this point. So I hope they know what they've done. So what do y'all think, guys, about everything that we discussed here? What are your thoughts about the prosecution of Trump? Do y'all think it's fair? Again, do y'all care about the boxes at all? I could give a fuck less. Like I said before, I really didn't care from the beginning, and I especially don't care now. Even more so, you know, I don't think that they're even done trying to convict or trying to put more and more charges on President Trump, and I think the further they take it, the worse it's going to be for them. I think somebody tweeted, or somebody said the other day somewhere, so I was like, basically like, if Joe Biden really was playing to win, if he actually still had a brain cell left in his body, or the people that were pulling his strings, his little puppet strings, actually had any real intelligence about them, they would advise him to come out and say that, like, he doesn't condone what's happening against Donald Trump, and, you know, he has every intention to basically pardon him and get rid of this whole thing, basically make himself look really good to the other side, and he would not really piss off that many people. Yeah, he might piss off a lot of people, but I think that it would kind of cripple Donald Trump in a way, and it would make him look better, and it would really kind of even things out, I think, at this point, because their favorability ratings are pretty much on par, even though it shows that Trump is obviously leading Joe Biden as far as getting votes goes. But I don't know. I thought that was an interesting thing. I don't think it would ever happen. They're like, Joe Biden's too much of a tool bag to ever even like think about something like that. He's too prideful, and he's too much of an idiot. So, what do y'all think, guys? Please let me know in the comments down below. And like the video if you liked it. If you learned something, give me a like. Give me a subscribe, guys. Subscribe to the channel and go follow me on Twitter. I would very much love that, and I would appreciate it so much from you guys. And yeah, so until next time, you guys take it easy out there, and I will see y'all later. Okay? Bye.
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.